Hi, this is Phoenix, and I recently came out with a book called Visions, Essays on Mental Illness, and I'm going to read an excerpt from one of the essays in the collection called A Day in the Life of a Delusional Mind. I'm really excited about sharing this excerpt, and if you like what you hear, you can find my book Visions, available for Kindle and paperback, on my author page at amazon.com/author/Phoenix_rises. In the meantime, is this a little bit of this essay, and I hope that you enjoy. I love philosophy. As a person with a mental illness, it is remarkable just how helpful philosophy can be. Philosophy is essentially there to help people reason better. Philosophy is essentially cognition. When you analyze arguments, you are also analyzing the way people think and critiquing how they could have thought better. This ranges from anything to thinking through Kant's understanding of logic, to thinking about what makes an argument rational or cohesive, as well as thinking simply about what makes an argument useful via an effective structure. As such, I tend to abstract my problems, as well as rationalize through my problems as a result. I, in other words, intellectualize my mental issues, my literal symptoms. It's the coolest thing in the world, and it helps me stay afloat and not run into trouble. What does this have to do with the delusional mind? It has everything to do with the delusional mind. It's difficult to occupy both mindsets, a heavily philosophical and rational mindset, and one that is clearly derailed by delusions. Nonetheless, I have found a way to synthesize the two. When I become delusional and experience the exhilaration that brings, I bring in a philosophical perspective and a philosophical structure to my delusions and to my thought in order to give it strength. Likewise, when I'm thinking philosophically, I add a little bit of delusion to keep things interesting. They work in tandem, and it's remarkable. I'll use last night as an example. Last night, I was pretty angry at a neighbor. The intense emotions I was feeling caused me to dip into a delusional mindset. This included some paranoia, but also some strange thoughts. Throw in a little mania, and you've got trouble. However, I was literally carrying a book with me. It was a book called Physics and Mind, about the philosophy of mind, neurobiology, psychology, and how that all fits into quantum mechanics and physics, and vice versa. The book was certainly firing my imagination, but the book was also an anchor for my chaotic thoughts. In other words, having the book there was a way to keep me grounded in reality, whatever reality may be. With my delusional thinking, I was able to come up with all sorts of interesting scenarios and thoughts that I presented as facts. For instance, I said rather cleverly that 1 in 100 Americans suffer from the psychosomatic delusion that they have some kind of disease, at least intermittently, usually thinking they have diabetes, or what I at the time described to be some kind of metabolic condition. I have no idea if this makes sense medically, but that wasn't the point. I went on to theorize how it's the food we eat that causes this delusion. Of course, complete and utter insanity, but when I get in these moods, that is the furthest thing from my mind, is the truth value of my delusion. And yet, I have learned to call the bluff on my delusions, which is the point. I have learned to call the bluff because I know that you have to formulate things very tightly, formulate claims very tightly, if there is to be any truth value in them, thanks to the study of philosophy. But I was able to utter this delusion I had with some kind of authority to the people around me because I had the idea formulated enough to where, even if it was crazy, it was formulated robustly and could even make logical sense. For all I know, in fact, this could be true. I can pretty much guarantee that it isn't, because this was a straight-up delusion on my end, but that's the cool thing about reality. Aside from facts that we know to be true, just about anything we claim may or may not be true. I had more fun with my delusions and rationality, and wherever the twain shall meet. I walked around and kept saying that I wanted to devour the minds of other people, so I would have their intelligence and think things the way they thought things, see things from their perspective. This was inspired by an X-File episode called Hungry, about a strange reptilian being who goes around literally devouring the brains of others. I was with my friend, and so I used the delusion that if I devoured the brains of others, metaphorically at least, I would be smart, but I told him explicitly, in line with the rationality and the grounding in something, that this idea of mine was simply an idea I found from the X-Files. It wasn't actually a delusion I was experiencing. Of course, a crucial distinction. As a side note, that delusion meant a lot to me. There are times when I just wish that I could literally have someone else's mind, because then not only would I see things the way they see things, but I would think normally and not panic every time I can tell that my thoughts are going off the rails. Anyway, other interesting and fun things happened. I kept saying over and over again, because I was confused and frustrated, that the more and more that I tried to process information, whether intellectual information or information in the real world, the slower that my processing became. The science behind this claim was inspired by the book I was reading, which talked about processing speeds and the various ways the brain can process things, but the claim itself was a deeper insecurity on my part. I feel that because I process things so strangely, I want to process them quicker and more effectively, but ironically, that's what makes me crazily psychotic. When I say that I process things slower inevitably, I'm saying that I go crazier and crazier when I stay with my thoughts, rather than better and more efficiently, more rationally. This, of course, isn't completely true, because I am able to keep my thoughts at bay, but not having my thoughts controlled does indeed scare me. I use that phrase, the claim that the harder you try to process information, the slower you become, as an anchor to my situation and what I perceive to be abnormal thinking on my end. Other interesting things happened as well. In the book, I encountered the idea that the brain, due to evolution, is always a work in progress. This, for me, for someone who was thinking about mental illness and the adaptive benefits of mental illness, such as a kind of increased brain capacity, perhaps intelligence, perhaps just the ability to process, gave me hope, because I started to think that maybe my brain, which is considered an evolutionary anomaly, might actually possess the hardware to pass down in future generations to really knock out the world because of its hardware and capacity. This was fanciful thinking, perhaps even a bit grandiose, but I will admit I felt a lot of pride when I was able to say to people that, indeed, the brain is a work in progress, meaning the brain is constantly evolving in order to improve itself, but most people don't know that because they try to limit their brain capacity or limit their intelligence. Burn. Again, that was an excerpt from my essay in my essay collection Visions, essays on mental illness. Again, if you liked what you heard or you're looking for other stuff to check out, my author page is at amazon.com/author/Phoenix_rises. I hope you enjoy what I read today. This is Phoenix, and thank you for your time.